What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So with the news dropping that Nintendo is suing Yuzu, the Switch emulator, there were of course a ton of reactions on social media, but we did have some interesting points made by lawyers who did chime in on this, and even some new information coming out from Yuzu on their Discord channel, and even the Streisand effect kicking in for their Patreon. But these are all things we're going to go over here in an update to the story today. Also, we are going to be talking about EA now announcing mass layoffs that once again bring up the idea of a video game crash potentially happening. And then we're also going to be taking a look at the PlayStation Plus games for the month of March, because there is at least one game in there that I think everyone should at least try. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members do get Newswave early and ad-free. If you want to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with actually a very candid response from the Tekken producer Harada over on X, as someone was asking why there are outfits in Tekken or Street Fighter that go for anywhere from $4 to $10. We can see this posted up though with his response over on X, where he says development costs are now 10 times more expensive than in the 90s and more than double or nearly triple the cost of Tekken 7. Even the Fight Lounge servers are costly to maintain. In the past, there weren't so many specs and there wasn't online. Plus, they didn't have such high resolution and high definition. Now, so many people want the game to run and be supported for a long time. It costs money to continually update the game for that reason. So this is the biggest thing, of course, that these companies, developers, publishers, whoever are struggling with right now, at least wrestling with, is that these budgets and development costs continue to rise and they have to find money somewhere. And I know we're up to now $70 games, but does that mean we have to go up to $80, $90, $100 per game? Or can they find the money elsewhere, like in this case with just cosmetics, outfit packs, that sort of thing? And this is something that, of course, is going to cause issues as we go along until we reach that eventual breaking point. But, well, I guess we'll talk a bit more about that in a bit here with EA. Also, we did have a response that was released by Insomniac with all the Sony layoffs that took place this week. This posted up over on their X account, where they say, like several other teams across SIE and PlayStation studios, Insomniac Games was impacted by yesterday's layoffs. There are no sufficient words to express our feelings about it. This is a solemn and unprecedented moment for our studio. And I saw many people ask, well, hold on, Spider-Man 2 sold 10 million copies. How in the world are they experiencing layoffs? Because they're also still working on, we assume, Spider-Man 3 at some point. Venom is coming out, the standalone game, and then Wolverine is definitely, obviously in development now, it leaked out. Well, at this point, we saw what the budgets had got up to with that leak that was making the rounds from Insomniac, and Sony would then be thinking, forward thinking, like, okay, how much bigger is this budget going to get, and where can we cut expenses with our slimming profit margin? And, well, really the biggest expense is your payroll, and that's what they had to do. So, yeah, it sounds weird. They sell 10 million copies of Spider-Man 2 very quickly, but they got to find people that have to go now because it just costs too much. Oh, and we had some surprising news, as it appears that Remedy now has full control of Control. This was done in a press release we can see here, posted up over on their Investors Remedy website, saying Remedy acquires full rights to the Control franchise from 505 Games. They announced a transaction upon which all publishing, distribution, marketing, and other rights to Control, codenamed Condor, Control 2, and all future Control products will revert to Remedy. They mentioned it cost about 17 million euros to do the deal. And that means that they have control of the sequel, but also that multiplayer game that I guess codenamed Condor here. Interesting stuff. 505 Games was willing to give that up for 17 million euros, I guess. In this case, we see a lot of these publishers, these companies getting more and more conservative. Maybe in their mind, you know what? 17 million euros, that's fine. We'll back off from here. We'll take the money. Good luck with it. And Remedy, clearly, a lot of confidence in the Control franchise and probably what they're working on internally with the multiplayer game and the sequel with Control 2. So we'll see what this allows them to do when it comes to creative freedom and, of course, its development pipeline. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with an update for the story around Nintendo versus Yuzu, as seems like Nintendo, yes, is moving forward with suing the very popular Switch emulator, and it's the point where it looks like Nintendo wants a full trial with a jury, the whole thing. And they're, of course, have been a lot of reactions, a lot of opinions online around if Nintendo can actually do this. Is this something that they have a case around? And it's led to quite a few armchair lawyers when it comes to this thing. And look, everyone, of course, going to have an opinion around this, but people speak very matter-of-factly at times on places like Twitter. But there have been some pretty good articles kind of exploring this, even reaching out and asking lawyers in general what their opinions are on this whole thing, which, for example, The Verge had a good write-up for it. This is titled, Nintendo Sues Switch Emulator Yuzu for Facilitating Piracy at a Colossal Scale. Nintendo isn't alleging Yuzu stole the keys, but says it's all about piracy, which we did go over how Nintendo paints an emulator in general as means to just play stolen software, basically, right? Like that's what they're saying an emulator is, despite also technically using emulators internally and then also with their NSO stuff. But anyway, in this write-up, though, it was really a good exploration of the situation, basically from the middle, looking both left and right at Yuzu and Nintendo, seeing if there is any case here. And part of this, they did reach out to a lawyer and ask their opinion on this whole matter. And this was from Richard Hogue, who's a business attorney who hosts the Virtual Legality podcast, saying, the important thing is that Nintendo is bringing the case as a DMCA circumvention claim. While emulators are broadly legal if engineered correctly, the DMCA also lets Nintendo focus on whether the emulator was only designed to break Nintendo's control over its games. There is a real chance for them to win as the court tests things like the effectiveness of the measure and just how the emulator was created, which I think is an interesting way to view this because there, of course, will be discovery. If it gets to trial, there's a chance that this is all settled outside of court, and at that point, Yuzu would probably disappear, or at least development would halt on the whole thing, so a cease and desist, of course. I don't know if it'd be completely erased off the internet. Is that possible? Because many people, of course, have it on their system, and it would probably still be circulated on places like archive.org or just on through torrents, that sort of thing. But active development that would to follow Nintendo potentially into next generation would be halted. And then who knows, at that point, they may follow up and look around at the landscape with emulators like Ryojinx that was there as well, playing The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom ahead of release, but still they're just focusing on Yuzu, at least for now. Now, Stephen Totilo did follow up with the breaking story throughout the day yesterday, and this, for example, was apparently Yuzu on Discord, which, well, let's see what they say first here, though. Says, via their Discord, Yuzu is telling its concerned community, we do not know anything other than the public filing, and we are not able to discuss the matter at this time. Okay, good. That's exactly what I was going to say. You can't really say anything right now, guys. They're already kind of in hot water because of Discord, which more and more information seems to be getting out there around. Nintendo clearly did their homework specifically on Discord with Yuzu, as the developers seem to be making a lot of claims in Discord very freely at times around certain aspects and what they were aware of. And I don't think that's going to go over so well in court necessarily, because look, these lawyers, of course, being vicious, will frame it in a certain way, and Discord is not doing them any favor. So it's a good idea for them to not say anything on Discord at all, even to their community, who clearly is a bit concerned right now. Nintendo, they don't go to court to lose. So I feel like Nintendo believes they have an incredibly strong case, and this is just what we know now. Again, discovery opens up and they get into court and really start hammering them. It could get kind of ugly, but it looks like people are, of course, taking to the cause, as kind of expect, with the Streisand effect of, oh, what's Yuzu? Oh, Nintendo's going after emulators. Well, again, on Stephen Totilo points out that Nintendo called out Yuzu's Patreon in the suit. Since news of the suit broke, that Patreon has gained supporters and increased its revenue by $500. I'm sure there are people who are going to support Yuzu and the Patreon as a way to maybe help support the calls against Nintendo, pushing against emulators, because I do wonder if that's a way that Nintendo will kind of frame and prop this entire thing up, is just against emulators completely, like especially current ones that are indeed, yes, emulating a commercially viable product. Now, it's one thing for legacy systems, like where Nintendo's not selling they're not selling DS games, Super Nintendo, NC. I know they do have them, of course, on NSO, sure, but they're not out there selling you the cartridge that's on eBay for 4 times the amount than it really should be because of just scarcity in the market for really a ROM on a mask ROM on a board. But this is still going to be, I think, a very important case to follow, and I do believe it's something that could set precedent one way or the other. So I'm going to continue following this case as we go along, and I think it's going to be something that will continue throughout this entire year. Again, the court system, very, very slow, but there will probably be consistent updates as to how exactly they're going to handle this, whether it is settlement or they go full on to discovery and then a trial, and we literally watch as emulation is kind of just hanging in the balance there for this trial of Nintendo versus Yuzu. So interesting stuff. We'll see how it goes. Next up, let's talk about EA, some of the mass layoffs they've announced and how people are looking around saying the video game crash is here. Now, EA released a statement on their website, which you can see here, and this is from Andrew Wilson, CEO at EA, who is announcing that roughly 5% of the workforce is being cut, and that amounts to roughly 670 people being laid off. It says, as a company full of creators and storytellers, we believe in the value of teams innovating together and continue to learn and adopt new ways of collaborating to grow and serve our global communities. Given how and where we are working, we are continuing to optimize our global real estate footprint to best support our business. We are also sunsetting games and moving away from development of future licensed intellectual property that we do not believe will be successful in our changing industry. This greater focus allows us to drive creativity, accelerate innovation, and double down on our biggest opportunities, including our owned IP, sports, and massive online communities, to deliver the entertainment players want today and tomorrow. Lastly, we are streamlining our company operations to deliver deeper, more connected experiences for fans everywhere that build community, shape culture, and grow fandom. In this time of change, we expect these decisions to impact approximately 5% of our workforce. And I do think this is obviously unfortunate, with 670 people being affected here by layoffs and them cutting so much of their workforce all at once. I do find it interesting, though, that they mention that they're going to be shying away from licensed intellectual properties, because obviously the big one I can think of is Star Wars and anything else they might work with Disney for. And it seems like, based on what we were observing with those Insomniac leaks, the pricing from Disney to at least Sony was going up as they went along. And they also started to throw in many stipulations around how many copies had to sell. There was a lot there that they had to accomplish for it to make sense for them to license it in the first place. And I almost wonder if EA is looking at that like, okay, it was fine when we had that exclusivity deal. You've opened it up, and now the stakes have really gone up, and it's not really worth it for us to continue along this path with these budgets climbing more and more and more, and then the licensing here. We'd rather focus on our own intellectual property, some more creativity alongside of it. And I think that is the right move. But also, it does make me wonder if, in general, this shift for gaming is going to amount to, well, just a more safe space for them. As in, they mention they're going to be focusing on like their sports stuff, known intellectual properties, and that means that, unfortunately, that first-person shooter Mandalorian game has actually been canceled. This from Laura Meal, who's the president of EA, saying, Respawn's unique ability to connect with players and create exceptional game experiences is unrivaled in entertainment. As we've looked at Respawn's portfolio over the last few months, what's clear is the games our players are most excited about are Jedi and Respawn's rich library of owned brands. Knowing this, we have decided to pivot away from early development on a Star Wars FPS action game to focus our efforts on new projects based on our own brands while providing support for existing games. So they will at least finish up Cal Kestis and his story after Jedi Survivor, as I guess that's supposed to be a trilogy, which, sure, that makes sense. Star Wars, they like to do, of course, these movies, or in this case, games, in threes. But that's kind of what I'm thinking now, is there won't be as many risks being taken as just the gaming industry in general becomes more and more careful and conservative with what they spend their money on. And yeah, that also includes licensed IPs like this, especially from Disney, where again, the money was just going up and up and up and up in terms of the budget. EA, I think, you're going to see that the typical stuff with the Madden. Sure, they'll be doing that, their soccer football game. And it does seem that things like Dragon Age and Mass effect are continuing on. As for Battlefield, however, we have another shift there. Ridgeline, who's the Battlefield studio, is actually being shut down, and development is moving to Criterion. So they'll be overseeing all of that. Battlefield will also continue as we would expect, considering that is like their big live service, first-person shooter, I guess, answer to Call of Duty, which hasn't really been an answer to Call of Duty in quite some time, but they're not going to be shelving that one, as that's something they can at least continue to build on with that brand recognition. But I see people saying, okay, this is the video game crash, right? I don't think so. They of course throw the percentages up. 5% of our workforce, 670 people. Can you imagine what happens if EA shut down? Like the number of people that would all of a sudden be laid off. And that's kind of what I'm envisioning, where the video game crash is actually here, where one of these massive publishers go under out of nowhere, and it's just, whoa, okay, that legitimately shakes the gaming industry at its core. So I don't think we're at a position where it's like, okay, a video game crash. I think we're at a stage of just reorganization for the video game industry, especially after what happened with the pandemic, where a lot of these companies had very inflated books for a fiscal year or two, and they're trying to more or less figure out the path forward afterwards when they're going to have years that will not at all compare to them. That's, I think, what we're seeing now, is them trying to level out and figure out, okay, where are we actually without these kind of inflated numbers? So we'll see going forward, but that's kind of what I'm envisioning now, is a year or two of very careful and calculated spending and budget setting for these companies until they figure out what their books really look like. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about PlayStation Plus Essentials for the month of March. These games will be going live March 5th, and we take a look here on PlayStation Blog. They have a nice little card at the top, and we'll be starting with F1 23. This is EA Sports, PS4 and PS5. Never been into the F1 games, but hey, there you go. It's dropping into PlayStation Plus. You can give it a shot. Then we have Sifu. That's on PS4 and PS5. Hello Neighbor 2, PS4 and PS5. And then we have Destiny 2, The Witch Queen, PS4 and PS5. They also have the Finals SO Sleek bundle that's exclusive to PlayStation Plus members. There's 2 epic outfits and 12 epic weapon skins. So I got a little backing, I guess, for the live service game on the PlayStation Store. The one that I would point out, though, as one that I think people should at least attempt, try out, see what you think, is Sifu. This is a pretty cool game. It's definitely more of a unique title in the sense that it is, people again say Souls-like game, but it's from the creators of Absolver, and it is a difficult game, yes, but it's also a very rewarding one that I think has a lot of replayability to it and is a blast when you get the hang of it. Just understand, you're going to go into it, probably get messed up quite a bit, but eventually it starts to click and you go through each level and you actually feel like you've accomplished something from it. So I recommend download it, give it like an hour, see what you think, and then go from there. And before we go to the comments of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, what was your favorite console from the 7th generation? Okay, so I put them in order here of the time that they came out. So the PS3 actually came out a little before the Wii, but the Xbox 360 got the most at 41%, then PS3 at 30%, and then the Wii at 29%, and that seems to line up. I feel like the 360 was just incredibly popular for a good portion of that generation, and I was really thinking back on this. If that time was like the peak of gaming, and what I mean by that is the second half of the PS2, Xbox, GameCube generation, and then like the first half, maybe a little more of that 360, PS3, and Wii generation, because at that point, we were in like the HD quote-unquote era, but we weren't to the point where we had social media and all these other things making noise around some of these releases. There was still kind of that discovery, but not necessarily the 8 or 16-bit pixel setup from back in the day. And there was still a lot of creativity and just attempts at new stuff, and some intellectual properties that are still going now, and in some cases for Ubisoft, holding up the entire company. This is an idea I had maybe for a video at some point, just to kind of go over if that was the peak of gaming, but we'll see if I get around to it. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day. We'll start with this one here. This is from Resh, who says, why can't Sony just let these smaller studios make smaller non-VR games for the PS5 rather than shutting them down? I think that's a good question, because I do feel like the future for the industry will be kind of like half and half, like half AA quote unquote games that come out at $40 or $50, and then half like big budget $70, maybe $80 games. We'll see what Sony wants to try in the future. But I think that is the strategy, rather than have these long runs of having to rely on third parties or just nothing. Have these experiences like a Helldivers 2, like Astro's Playroom, but throw them some more money and let them try to make a big 3D platformer with Astro. Just those sorts of things. I know games like Concrete Genie didn't do incredible in terms of the numbers that it sold, but it was a unique and interesting experience, and that's some of the stuff I would like to see Sony go back and attempt, but at least for now, it seems like they are full speed ahead on the big narrative blockbuster single-player games. And then we'll go over to one of the members' comments here. This is from Vampire. It says, slowing profits ever since PlayStation announced games coming to PC too has slowed down the PlayStation sales numbers. It's a bad idea. Imagine if Nintendo did the same. Sony has to stop putting exclusives on PC. It's hurting the brand as it did Xbox. So I don't actually think PC in general for Sony has anything to do with their profit margin slimming. That just has to do with them trying to produce more PlayStation 5 systems than they were able to sell, which does raise their costs, and then just their ballooning development budgets and them not able to balance that out with finding money in microtransactions or convincing everyone that games have to go to $80 or even $90. Looking at Nintendo, I still think there is a pretty big opportunity for them off of PC right now, but I feel like them looking at phones and using their older library of games would actually work well, and I wouldn't be shocked if they maybe thought of having some sort of subscription service on phones to boost their overall, just recurring revenue. NSO, kind of like that, right? Where you have an older library of titles, but just as a Netflix-like subscription service for your phone, and you log in with it, it's all there, and you can kind of play how you want. That is something maybe that they would try out. But as for them moving their big first-party games that sells their unique hardware to PC, I just don't think Nintendo's going to do that. They are, yes, behind the times, but also very stuck in their way and very stubborn about how they approach console exclusivity and their first-party games. You think Capcom is concerned and very careful and annoyed at the modding scene? Whew, can you imagine if Nintendo had to deal with that on PC? And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's the situation continuing to evolve between Nintendo and Yuzu going to court over that Switch emulator? And then also, what about EA announcing layoffs of 670 people, also canceling that Mandalorian first-person shooter? Do you think we are indeed heading towards a big industry crash, or is this just kind of a reorganization that we're in the middle of right now? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.